Talk about.
Hi, thank you for joining us tonight at RJ Julia. My name is Joan. Tonight, I am honored to introduce Clémence Michallon. And Kim is going to be our moderator.
I was applauding your pronunciation, not myself. You know that.
Our other author, Jessa Maxwell, unfortunately, right before the event started, we got a phone call that she was very sick. So she's not able to join us today. She is gonna be able to come in a couple weeks to sign books. So if you do want to purchase one of her books, you can talk to one of the booksellers about having her sign it and give it out for a book plate, and we will definitely get that to you. Okay. I'll tell you a little bit about Jessa. Jessa is a nationally best-selling author of The Golden Spoon, and I need to read this. Her new book is Dead of Summer. She's the author and illustrator of 5 picture books for children. Her comics and cartoons have been published in The New Yorker and The New York Times, and her writing has been published in Slate, Marie Claire, and many others.
Jessa is also a dear friend, and she's with us in spirit. And I'm so sad that she's not feeling well, but so grateful that you're stepping in. And thank you so much for everyone for sort of making it work. But Jessa's books are amazing. I've read her first 2. I'm currently reading the 3rd, the one that just came out today. I was listening to it on my drive here, and I'm very happy to be here, but I'm also really looking forward to going back to the car to listen to more. So it's really, Dead of Summer is really one of those books that you're just happy. It's suspenseful and gripping, but you're also happy to just be in it while you're reading it. And it's just the perfect book for this season and this moment. So do read it.
And this is her day. This is her.
And this is the release day.
Yes. We support her, not just for her books, but lifting her up.
Yes.
Well, we are very glad that you're here.
Thank you.
Clémence. And Clémence is an author and a journalist. Her debut thriller, The Quiet Tenant, was published in June 2023. We're also selling copies of that. The Quiet Tenant was an international bestseller. Clémence was born and raised near Paris and moved to New York City in 2014. She studied journalism at City University of London and received a master's in journalism from Columbia University. Tonight, she'll be sharing with us her new book, Our Last Resort. I want to thank Clémence for joining us tonight, and I want to thank Ken for stepping in to be our moderator.
Yeah, it was a to meet you. Sounded like real fun. Yeah, no, for sure. I did take a shower.
Warm welcome to Clémence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting us. Thanks for getting us.
So my first start, tell us a little bit about your book, the premise, and also the locations.
And thank you so much, everyone, also for being here. Let me tell you about Our Last Resort. Our Last Resort is my second crime novel. It tells the story of Frida and Gabriel, who travel to this beautiful but very isolated resort in the desert in Utah. And they go there in order to try to mend their sibling relationship. Everything is going okay, not perfectly well, but well enough, until a few days into their stay, a female guest turns up dead, evidently murdered. The murder investigation is going to quickly focus on Gabriel because it's not the first time a woman has died in his orbit. Frida and Gabriel share a particular kind of bond because they both grew up in a cult together in upstate New York. So the novel is told in dual timelines. One of the timelines spans days and follows the murder investigation and its consequences on our characters. And the other timeline spans years and years and follows their past in the cult and the fallout from that.
Excellent. So my next question is, so you were born outside Paris and then New York City, and now you live in New York State. So you decided to set this novel in southern Utah. And I want to know about that.
So setting was actually the first element that occurred to me for this book. It was the first kernel of an idea. Basically, my previous crime novel, The Quiet Tenant, is set in upstate New York in the winter. So in that book, it's always cold. The ground is frozen. It's often dark because, you know, the sun sets at 5 p.m. if you've been to upstate New York in the winter. which I was very recently. And The Quiet Tenant is also a captivity story. So the settings in that book are very simple, and there aren't like a ton of them. There's a restaurant, a house, and a garden shed, and that's it. And after coming out of working on that book, I thought I would like to go somewhere warm and beautiful, and to a place that people travel to on purpose and willingly. And so my mind traveled back to a beautiful hotel in Utah in the desert that I went to 15 years ago with my parents. And it was the most beautiful, gorgeous place I had ever seen. And to this day, it still is in the top 5. But it was also really secluded. And you were really aware that while you were at the hotel, your needs were met, you were pampered. But you were also surrounded by this climate, which is really inhospitable to human life. You couldn't make a quick escape, right? Like you're surrounded by desert. There's only one access road to the hotel. It's hard to find. I should know, we missed it 15 times. And, you know, they have your car because you valet your car when you get there. And it was really just hard to forget that we were kind of prisoner of that wonderful place. And I thought, wow, that would be a really good place to set a murder story.
That's great. So this includes a cult plot. So tell me why you decided how that element, I think they're great.
Yeah, you know, it's such an interesting process putting all the pieces together. A few years ago, I interviewed the marvelous Taylor Jenkins Reid.
Yes, she's
And she's so great. I haven't read Atmosphere yet. I'm keeping it for after tour. It'll be my sort of like 48 hours to bounce back in my garden with like the book. But she called it filling your sandbox. You know, early on, you kind of assemble the big elements that you're going to play with in the course of writing the book. And the way I did this was by sort of following the story and the characters. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a novel at a beautiful hotel where a murder takes place. And someone is going to get accused of having committed that murder. Okay. The question I keep going back to in my work is, how well do you ever really know the people you love? And so I thought, whoever gets accused of murder is going to be there with someone who loves them very much. And so it's going to be very tricky to wonder, ooh, is this person I love capable of murder? Okay, fine, we have this. Now, I was thinking, if someone you love gets accused of murder, your first reaction presumably is going to be denial. I can think of one exception to this, which is when the man was arrested a couple of years ago for allegedly being the Long Island serial killer. There was this one quote, so it's not funny, but there was this one quote in the New York Times by this neighbor, and it was the most New York quote I've ever read. They said, "We were not surprised," quote, "because of all the creepiness."
So yeah, you usually hear he was such a man.
Yes.
Yes.
So anyway, usually though, the reaction is disbelief. But I thought, you know, if you're confronted with enough evidence, you're going to have to sort of accept the possibility that it might be true, that they might have done it. And I wanted my character, who was going to have to come to that realization, to contemplate the possibility of the other person's guilt. I wanted that character to have really strong mental barriers. And I wanted the emotional stakes to be really, really high. I wanted it to mean the end of the world for that person, if she had to consider that maybe this person she loves very much is a murderer. And I thought, well, if these two had grown up in a cult together and maybe gotten out together and managed to make their way into the world together and survive that trauma, it would create a very strong bond that would make that realization all the more tricky, devastating, rather. And I don't want my characters to have a good time. They're having fun in trouble. Yeah.
So you talked about one of the things that I found really intriguing when you were talking about Utah in this resort is the isolation enforced by the environment there. But also the theme of isolation runs throughout this book. And maybe if you could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, you know, I think it's something I'm sensitive to as a person, and it does tend to worm its way into my work. The Quiet Tenant was a captivity story, obviously, so the feeling of isolation is quite strong in that book. And then this one, my characters in the past are isolated in the cult, which we learn pretty soon is a sort of commune style cult. So they're on a compound, they don't have contact with the outside world, or at least they're not supposed to have contact with the outside world. But much like I'm in trouble if my characters are having fun, I'm also in trouble if they're not up to things they're not supposed to do. So they're isolated in the cult and they're isolated in this hotel. I think there is something about crime novels that take place in settings that can't be left very easily. It's relentless. Physically, my characters can try to leave this problem, this awful place, but it's inescapable. I came to a point in the novel, writing Our Last Resort, where I realized there was a parallel to me in the way that anytime they tried to step away from the hotel, they were brought back to its center. Every time they tried to step away from their problems, not solve them, leave them aside, they would get pulled back in. There's something about that tangible inescapability that mirrors the inescapability of the central dilemma of the emotional stakes.
That's excellent. So you have referred to them as siblings, but they're not biologically related. But let's talk a little bit about found family.
Yeah.
And the bonds that, sometimes the bonds with the people we choose to be family can be even stronger than the bonds with our siblings.
Absolutely. So this is not a spoiler. We find that out really early on in the book, but even though Gabriel and Frida refer to each other as siblings and call each other siblings, and I almost wrote a lot of the book not revealing Gabriel's name, and he was just my brother, and then that got a little tedious, and I realized people have names for a reason. And, not everything can be written around. They're not actually biologically related, but what I found interesting is the cult they are from erases family ties. Kids in the cult don't know who their parents are. There are the mothers collectively and the fathers, but they don't know which person is whose parent, because cults do that.
Yeah,
They
you're right.
sort of erase, they isolate people from their families because it keeps them away from a support system that would take them out of the cult. So I thought, well, for Gabriel and Frida, it wouldn't necessarily mean all that much to them that they're not biologically related. This found family would be just as important to them. But also I thought, again, I wanted the emotional stakes to be really high. If someone in your biological family turns out to be capable of great cruelty, it's horrible, it's traumatic, it's something you have to process. What if it's someone you chose?
Because I didn't choose that person.
Yeah.
My sister.
Exactly.
Right.
You don't choose your blood family.
Right.
You're stuck with them.
Right.
What if it's someone who called to you for a reason, that you felt you had something in common, that you felt bonded to? What if it's someone you invited into your life? Then I thought that made it just that tiny little extra bit trickier, which again is good for me as a writer, bad for my characters.
That sounds like a good formula there. So both of those characters sound so interesting. Which character came to you first? One of those or another one in the book? And how did that sort of propel the development of the story? Wow.
The main character in the book is Frida.
Right.
We only have her perspective. Because I thought, well, I'm doing dual timelines. Let's stick to one person's head. Although, in the future, I may have a little bit of fun. Just exploding everything.
Right.
Time, voices,
Yeah.
space. Let's do it all. But my main character is Frida,
Yes.
and she came first. And my concept of her evolved as I wrote the book. She had a few jobs in the course of writing the many drafts. But I knew that she was going to be someone who had kind of a unique experience in the cult. Who had sort of, in terms of navigating the power dynamics in the cult and surviving all of that. And I knew that being a survivor would be a key characteristic in Frida. I knew that she was going to be a bit of a control freak, a bit compulsive, or a lot compulsive, possibly, a bit isolated. And crucially, Frida ended up being a day trader in the final version of the book by herself because she's a bit of a loner. It was the hardest part to write because I had to understand what day traders do and how they do it. And it was at one point, I was like, I don't hair. She sits in front of her computer and she makes the money. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't understand. If I knew how to do it, I would do it. And it was the one thing my editor kept getting back to me and saying, there's still not enough. Like, what does she do? And I realized, like, you really have to understand, like, as if you explain it to, you know, like, okay, she's a day trader. She wakes up, what does she do? And I ended up in these Reddit threads of all these trading bros being like, 4 a.m., I cold plunge, 5 a.m., protein shake, 6 a.m., I journal, 7 a.m. or whatever. The market's open, you know, and I had fun imagining my little weirdo character kind of beating these bros at their own game. But so she came first, and then Gabriel came second, and then the cult leader, I think, probably came third, close third.
Okay, great. So some novelists don't want to know how their novel is going to end because they say that it leads them to surprises. Others need to know. That helps. Where are you on that? And did you know how this one was going to end?
I am physically incapable of predicting plot-wise where a novel is going to go. I wish I were even a little bit good at it. But when I try to outline an ending, I sound like I have lost touch with reality. And so when I start a book, I know how it's going to begin. And I know how it's going to end, not from a plot standpoint, as we just established, but from an emotional stakes point of view.
Okay, got it.
So I know who's going to be okay and who is not going to be okay. And I know who's going to win and who's not going to win. How I get there and what form it takes is something I apparently need to write 15 drafts to figure out. But what I thought, here's an interesting thing about this. Our Last Resort is a book with a twist. And I wasn't planning on writing a book with a twist. I thought I wouldn't learn how to write a twist for another 15 years because that sounded really hard. I thought, no way, I'm not touching that. But sometimes a novel takes you in a certain direction and then you can try to ignore it, but your editor will call you out on that. And that's what happened. And so I wrote the twist. And so from a plot point of view, if you look at the draft that doesn't have the twist and the draft that has it, from a plot standpoint, almost everything is different in terms of the ending.
Yeah.
Emotionally, though, it almost didn't change. It's pretty much the same. The character who's okay is okay. The character who's not okay is not okay. You know, it's. I think a story knows what it needs to be, but you have to figure out how to give it shape.
Right. Oh, that sounds so good. So this is your second novel, and your first novel being The Quiet Tenant. So did anything surprise you while you were writing the second one when compared to your first novel?
Yeah, one aspect of it was marginally easier, and it was writing in English, which is not my first language. And when I wrote The Quiet Tenant, I was just, it's kind of like when you start driving, you're just very aware that you are driving. And I was very aware. I don't know if anyone recently learned how to drive, but I did. So yeah, like you're just super aware. You're like, I'm going 33, I'm going 34, I'm going 35. Like every little change feels really big. And then you learn how to drive and you just kind of like don't feel the difference anymore between 65 and 73. Anyway. And I think this happened a little bit language-wise. When I was writing The Quiet Tenant, I was just super aware that I was writing in English all the time. And this time around, that aspect of it felt a bit more natural and automatic. Everything else, people do not lie when they say it doesn't get easier. It's so hard. I think because every novel is its own thing, and every novel needs different things. And my dear hope is that as your career progresses, you get better at trusting the process.
Okay, that's fair.
So that's what I'm aiming for.
That seems like a really good book. So along those lines, can you talk with us a little bit about your writing process? And again, whether it's evolved from your first novel to your second one.
I'm always trying to pin down my writing process, but the thing is, it's actually fairly changeable. There is one thing that never changes, and is that sorry, so much talking outside. Bless you. There's one thing that never changes for me in terms of process, and it's that I process through word count. So every day I have to write a certain number of words.
What's the number of words in
So that's the thing. It changes depending on where I am.
Okay, fair.
If I'm at the very, very, very beginning of a first draft, which I find terrifying, overwhelming, awful, it's 500 because I can't look at it for too long or I get scared. If I'm rolling, it's between 500 and 1,000. If I'm late, it's 1,500. If I have to write the whole book in 3 months, it's 2,500. Right now, because I'm on tour, it's 500. After this, I actually have to go back to my hotel and write 500 words. Yeah, so that's pretty much the only constant. I like writing in the morning, but it's not always possible. I must have coffee either while I'm writing or just before, but it would feel very unnatural for me to not have coffee. And then more specifically craft wise, so I don't outline, but there is a craft book I like called Story Genius. And I think craft books, so books about how to write, I think they're a little bit like exercise, like physical exercise or workouts or whatever. If you want one, you just have to figure out the one that works for you. They all kind of teach you the same thing and achieve the same thing. You just have to figure out the one that talks to you. And Story Genius is mine. Lisa Cron, Cron. Okay. And it's so interesting. She makes you do these little exercises to get to know your characters and understand what makes them tick. Like what's their big misunderstanding about life that informs their actions. And I do that as prep work, actually.
It's nice, almost like a warm-up that you can do to.
Yeah, and it does help you sort of having a story that has its own dynamic and you can refer back to it. If I'm ever unsure, what would this character do next? Or why would they do this? And what would they do that? I can refer back to that prep work I did. And I actually do it a few times. Right now I'm almost done with this first draft and I found myself going back, okay, now that I know them a little better, can I re-outline this a bit more specifically? So
speaking of which, what are you working on next? If you want to talk about
yes. I am working on a new crime novel, a new psychological thriller, psychological suspense. It was an idea that I had before The Quiet Tenant came out. And with some ideas, you need to like work up to them. And it's been on my mind for a little bit. I'm worried about revealing specifics because so much is going to change in edits. I just know. But it's really fun.
I'll be back here and they'll be like, you said.
Yeah. And I will say that if you follow me on Instagram, I have a little hobby, obsession, whatever the word may be, that I've sort of broadcast in the past couple of years, and it plays a part in hopefully it won't completely disappear in edits. It plays a part at least right now in the next novel.
That sounds great. So tell us about some of your favorite contemporary authors.
Yes.
Thriller writers.
Yes. So I am Megan Abbott's #1 fan.
Okay.
Self-appointed. Maybe there is someone else out there, but I just I remember the first Megan Abbott book I ever read. It was The Fever. I remember where I was, what I was doing, where I was sitting, and I just had never read a book like that one before, and I didn't know you could write like this, and it really shaped me as a reader and as a writer. So all of Megan Abbott's works, big fan. Jessica Knoll, who wrote Like They Start Alive and Bright Young Women and The Pretty Good Sister. I love what she does. I'm a big Mary Higgins Clark, and she's awesome. Good okay. The first
you were a kid.
Yes, thank you very much. It's the first crime novel I think I ever.
No, at your mom's bookshop?
Yes, to my mom.
Christy before that, maybe?
Yes.
Oh.
You need to start traveling.
I
I'll drive you. Look for the white beetle. Let's get hop on. Yeah, I had read some Agatha Christie when I was a kid, and then there were none. Specifically, it was a big one. I recently reread bits of it and forgot how unsettling it is. And I knew I was going to be alone in a big empty house in the woods, and I was like, let's read something else. Let's not do this. And then Mary Higgins Clark's Loves Music, Loves to Dance was, my mom had the French paperback on her nightstand one summer at my grandparents' beach house in France. I plucked it from her nightstand And it just intrigued me because, so Loves Music, Loves to Dance is about a serial killer who is killing women in New York who he's meeting through classified ads. It's set a few years ago. And he has this massive foot fetish. So the French paperback cover has like these bare legs and they each have a different shoe. And I was like, that looks intriguing. That does not look like
say 12.
Yeah, I was like,
I'm like, oh my God, she's reading this, but
it was France. I was like, that looks like something I'm not really supposed to be reading. Let's look at it. Yeah. And I spent the whole afternoon basically just reading the book. And if you haven't read it and you buy the paperback, the most recent edition, there is an introduction by me. So, but it really is just a great book. Oh my God, the penguin is so terrifying. And I remembered who it was, who the guy was, and who was the serial killer, because that's the big mystery of the book. But she is so good that even though I was certain I remembered, she got me to doubt myself.
so good.
Yeah.
That's so fun. So I'm gonna see, I have a billion more questions, but when you all, I don't know.
So the quiet tenant was really dark. Like it was super dark. This one was dark, but not as dark. And I know that you read horror.
Yeah.
Why are you not writing horror?
It's so funny that you asked this now.
Is there horror funny?
I've actually not, I had an idea 2 days ago. I've had like no official discussions about it, but I would really like to write. I have an idea for something that would be a good so it's
You
not
really have it in you because the quiet tenant is just creepy and unsettling and it screwed me up. And if there's not like blood and nuts in there, it would be like,
You're saying
I would
screwed
be
you up
excited
in a
about
good
that.
way.
I thought about it for days.
Okay.
I really did, and it was on my my top 10. So I was like, I love it. It really screwed me up.
I also recently just moved to a town that's right outside of Sleepy Hollow. And the vibes are so good. The logo for the Chamber of Commerce, which is not a very rock and roll organization, is the headless horseman with like a jack-o'-lantern. It's so funny.
I love that. And you Instagram or
Bookstagram.
Instagram. Okay, cool. Very fun.
Yes, we have.
Yes. Hello. Thanks for coming back.
Did you have a question? Oh, anybody else?
I did start our last resort on the way here, and so far I'm hooked.
Thank you.
I was reading to my mom because I drive, but she came with me. She's in the car, and I like to read out loud to her. And so far it's really good.
That's amazing. Thank you very much.
And you're from Rhode Island?
I'm from Connecticut. Oh, right. Wait. I'm on the border of Connecticut.
What else? Oh, hi, Maria. How about Palm Beach?
I do have a
Okay,
question.
there you go.
I'm interested in the cult part. Do you spend any time talking about how they got out of the cult?
In the book?
Yes, is that
Yes.
a part of it?
Absolutely, yes, there are
Okay.
many chapters. It was actually a very interesting part for me to write because I think about cults a lot, and I hate cults.
I'm there with it.
I mean, I find that cults are so infuriating because they prey on people who have really good qualities, right? Like people who are existential, who are very value oriented, who want something to believe in, who ask themselves a lot of questions. And then cults are predatory organizations who use these otherwise positive traits against people. And you can get out of the cult, but you can never get back the time that you lost with connection with your family, your loved ones, and the real world. And that really pisses me off.
Not easy to get out of.
No, and it's really
Yeah.
hard. I mean,
Because you have to also like realize that they're the problem.
well, and it gets
Yeah.
increasingly harder because there's like, but I've spent all this time in there. I've believed this for years and I've shaped my life around these beliefs. And so what if I get, it's really hard. The longer you get, the stronger the mental barrier gets. And there are people whose whole job, they're deprogrammers or something like that.
Yes.
They just help people get their loved ones out of cults and high control groups. And it was really interesting to study just what does it look like to leave a cult. And in the case of the characters in the book, they're raised off the grid. So when they leave the cult, for example, they don't have birth certificates, or officially they don't exist. And there's a way, there are people like this in the US who were raised in various groups off the grid and who have to sort of start proving their existence. And I have to admit, as a novelist, it was not necessarily a problem I was prepared to solve when I started this book. But it turns out there are ways you do it. You find someone who sort of witnessed your birth, they can write an affidavit. Like, it's just a way, to do it. And it was really, really interesting to write those bits.
They didn't go in the cult together, it just.
They were born in it.
What?
In the book, they were born in it.
So I have a question. You said you were born here
Correct.
and you were in France?
Yes.
Born, yes. Do you find that, so I'm thinking about what's your inspiration in cults in Europe versus cults in the United States? Do we have a propensity in this country for cults?
So-
Cult-ish behavior? Do you wonder if?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a political question.
No, there are. It is like studying cults. So for me, I'm a consumer of true crime, and every time I sort of learn about true crime is a really interesting lens through which you can get to know a country, because you get to know, like, who goes to prison here and for what, and like how is that decided? Like it's a really interesting way to get to know the country. And so vis-a-vis cults, though, there are aspects in the structure here that allow various groups to prosper. If you register your organization as a church, for example, you're tax exempt. It's much harder to regulate you and stuff. And so various groups take advantage of that. However, I'm from France, and France is a pretty culty country. Yeah, it's I don't know what it is, but there is an infamous French cult by a guy who goes by Rael. His real name is Jean-Claude. Sorry, if you are French, that's fun. You just have to take my word for it. But his whole shtick is that there's a full documentary about this on Netflix, which I recommend. It's very good. But his whole shtick, I do not remember, but if you look up French cult Netflix documentary, it might be called Rael, like it's something R-A-E-L. His whole shtick is that he was allegedly visited by aliens who, it was awesome, and the aliens want to come back and visit us, but they will only do so if they feel welcome, and so we have to build them a big welcome center. And so you have to give them all your money. Yes. And various other things. And so that's like, that came out of France. I can't, and also when I was a kid, I remember walking past to go to the bookstore. I had to dodge the Scientology people. They were on the sidewalk trying to give you the stress test, and you're always stressed, is the answer. And so then they ask you, like, what's stressing you out? And then you tell them on your darkest secrets, and there you go. That's you are. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, why am I stressed out right now? So France, I think a lot of countries have the potential for cults, and then I think they kind of just grow specifically within the infrastructure of each country. Yeah. Who else has a question?
I'm curious how long it took to write Innocence.
It's a good question. Let's see. So The Quiet Tenant came out in 2023. And so 2 years later, here we are. So let's see. I finished the first draft of Our Last Resort the day before The Quiet Tenant came out. I remember because I sent it to my agent the day of the release of The Quiet Tenant, and then I broke my laptop. Like I dropped it. No, I dropped it, and just like I had to buy a new one. So, but I think the first draft took 6 months, and then I revised it on my own. I remember we sent it to my editor in the fall. So, 9 months on my own, I think. And then I was in edits for 10 months on this book. But it was a good amount of time to spend in edits, but we wanted to make sure we got it just right. So roughly 2 years.
Wow, and is that similar to for the first book?
Yeah, actually, yeah. The Quiet Tenant, it was 6 months of writing, 6 months of revising on my own, so a full year before I sent it to the agent who ended up representing me. And then I was in edits it was 6 months, but once we started, but there's always a bit of buffer because they don't know when it's gonna acquire you, so like, there's a couple of months. So yeah, it was roughly 2 years as well. Funny how you find your pace. Some people do a book a year. I don't know how.
That's huge.
I respect that a lot. It's very, my brain doesn't work that fast. Yes.
There's one author, I don't know if you know her name, Kirsten Boslin. She's newly like, I think she turned 31 this year. And she just wrote her 50th book. She writes like 6 books a year.
Wow.
What kind of books are there? They're psychological, suspenseful books. Yeah,
That's, I'm exhausted just.
and they're all
You're
different
tired.
and they're all good.
Wow.
I have her. Yeah, she's good. If
Interesting.
you ever want to check her out.
I would. Very impressive. Wow.
Who else? Questions, how are we doing on time?
7:09, thank you.
So keep going.
Do you, any more
Any more
questions?
questions? I do have one more question. I think I know what it is. So, you recently completed your first marathon while wearing your signature red lipstick. Have you always been a runner? How does running help you as a writer? And tell us about the red lipstick.
Yes. I started running seriously, as in like, going regularly and tracking. Like originally I tracked time and like whatever time I spent running. I didn't even know to care about pace or whatever. I started when I was 20. And I'm now 33. So I guess I have 13 years of running somewhat regularly. And I don't think I would be able to write novels if I didn't also run long distances. I'm not by nature a patient person, not at all. But it's interesting because almost the only thing you need as a writer is patience. Patience with yourself, patience with the work, patience with the people you work with, or just the industry, the pace of publishing. It's not, And running taught me that small incremental efforts sustained over a period of time really do add up to something. Because when you run a marathon is 26.2 miles, but when you're training, you don't run the full distance, right? Like you do 5 miles and then 6 and 8 and stuff, and it all adds up. And when I'm running, I'm not trying to run well. I'm just trying to run. That's the whole point. I mean, I wouldn't know what it would look like trying to run well. Like my stride is what it is. I don't, So showing up is the whole job for me as a runner. And it taught me that I think it really physically taught me that if I keep writing 500 words a day, which doesn't feel like enough to amount to anything, it does in fact amount to something in the end. So that's the big lesson of running for me. The lipstick is very important. It is Maybelline.
Yes.
The matte ink, I think it's called, shade 20. It's called Pioneer. It's incredible. You can run a marathon in it.
Okay.
It doesn't rub off.
It's so good. It's good for running, it's good for writing.
Well, and I like it because I wear it on my author photo. This way when I show up somewhere, people like go, oh, because it's very hard to
I
know
did
what.
know it was you when you walked.
Honestly, the other day, I met an author whom I respect immensely. It had been he had a different haircut than on his author photo. I did not recognize him. I was shaking his hand and someone went, this is so and so, and I went, oh my God. Yeah, I did that. So I think it's, no, I can't say. Good question. I will tell you after.
On camera. Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. To come see me after the show. I know. But so I think it's nice to give people a little visual aid sometimes. Very good.
Some questions. Hi. So I teach 6th grade language arts, and I'm curious, did you enjoy writing like elementary school, middle school, high school? Did a teacher, so it's a 3-part question. Did you enjoy writing at that age? Did a specific teacher inspire you? And if so or if not, what do you wish that a teacher would have said to the kids like middle school age about writing?
great questions. Yes, yes to everything. I was 7 years old when one day I went to school, and by then I was already a kid who liked to read. I had learned to read early, and I loved to read, and I always had my nose in a book. But it had never occurred to me to wonder how books were made. I had not yet realized that if there are books, it means there are people who write them, which was the age of innocence. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, like it hadn't occurred to me to wonder. And one day in school, I was 7, my teacher, my elementary school teacher, had us do what turned out to be my first ever creative writing exercise. She put up a little poster on the blackboard, and it was an illustration from a children's book. And it was a tree, and in the tree was a squirrel, and flying at the squirrel's height was a bird. And we had to imagine what they were saying to each other. And I loved it. It was the most fun I'd ever had. And I came home and I proclaimed that I wanted to be a novelist. And I was promptly informed that it was not going to be a reliable job. So I became a journalist instead, which is funny because honestly, it is not a reliable job. No, but everything I liked was not a reliable job. So I'm a law school dropout. I did 1 year of law school. My favorite subject, criminal law. It's the one that doesn't earn very much. It's incredible. I was never going to be like a day trader, as we established. So I did enjoy writing in the elementary school. So that teacher played a big part. But then I had a French teacher, like as in French literature teacher in middle school, and she like entered one of like this short story I'd written in this contest that I promptly lost 2 years in a row. It's fine, whatever. But I remember that she had read my stuff, and she was encouraging about it, and she told me never stop writing, because sometimes you let life take over. And and she like trailed off. She never finished that sentence. And I never forgot that. It just made me realize that a life where I write and maybe I try stuff and I fail would be better than a life where I don't write. It's painful to try and fail. And this is not an easy industry. It is an industry so harsh that it can turn even the most objective measure of success into a disappointment. It is really hard, but trying and failing I am much happier than never having tried. So that taught me that, and that is really important. And then I had a philosophy teacher in high school who also read my short stories and was very patient and kind. So I was, not every teacher was encouraging. I went to a high school where like being a writer wasn't particularly encouraged, but it only takes like the one teacher who says that one sentence, and it can really pay dividends.
Amazing. Great question.
Great question. Thank you. I enjoyed that.